And so I'm calling on Gavin Newsom to follow the lead, not just of President Trump nationally, but other Democrat governors, including here in the West with Colorado, and order that flags are flown at half-staff to honor Charlie Kirk. Now, as you know, I'm planning to be the next governor of California, and we win it for Charlie, as I plan to do. When that happens, I will make sure we honor Charlie appropriately here in California.
Like me, I was lost, but now.
So we have another case today of the Democrat Party saying that we need to condemn violence and turn down the temperature. But apparently, let's not turn down the temperature too much. Let's not overly condemn the violence. And this example comes out of my hometown of Los Angeles, California, where over the weekend, LA Mayor Karen Bass explicitly refused to follow a federal directive that ordered U.S. flags to be lowered to half-staff in order to honor the life and mourn the death of Charlie Kirk. Although in the Democrats' eyes, you could see it also just mourning and condemning political violence, because I thought that's an issue they were all about and they took so seriously. Well, it turns out some Democrats take it more seriously than others, because it's worth noting here that many other Democrat governors and mayors in this country decided to go along with the federal directive as a pure show of class or unity or whatever. But you saw specific decisions made by Karen Bass and other California Democrats, including Gavin Newsom, to refuse to show any degree of reverence to Charlie Kirk. So what exactly was that all about? Well, we'll break that down for you here today in this video. So folks, if you enjoy our content, do us a favor, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And that said, here is the simple information. We'll tell you about it. So according to my friend Anthony Cabasa, who is on the ground back home, quote, a LAFD, Los Angeles Fire Department source has sent me this internal email that was sent to many city employers that the mayor of LA has instructed Los Angeles city flags not be displayed at half-staff. Here's what it reads, quote, all city flags, which includes the American flag, by the way, shall be displayed on department facilities at full staff from 0800 hours to 1700 hours each day. Flags shall remain raised to full staff each day and should not be lowered to half staff unless directed by the mayor. And newsflash, that direction from the mayor never came, so all the city flags in Los Angeles did not go to half-mast in order to honor Charlie Kirk, despite that happening on federal grounds. Now, just to clarify so people understand this issue legally speaking, the executive order by Trump to lower all flags to half-staff only applies to federal property. And so, yes, from a legal perspective, the mayor did have the ability to do this, but generally speaking, right? In situations like that across the country, usually it's just a given that state and local governments will follow along because, after all, the entire nation is in mourning. Of course, that's why I'm pointing out Karen Bass made this decision explicitly, and the second reason she was able to do it is because no central command came from California Governor Gavin Newsom. As Steve Hilton, who is now running for governor in that state, pointed out, quote, Charlie loved California and California loved Charlie. He built a huge movement here. Everywhere I go, I meet young people he has inspired. So please, Gavin Newsom, order flags at half-staff to honor Charlie, just as other Democrat governors have done. That's the other aspect of this story that we need to keep in mind. This was not an issue of like, oh, none of the Democrats thought about this, or it was strictly along party lines, or heck, even bigger than that. None of the state governments did this. No. Many Democrat governors, including some you would not expect, decided to show enough class to lower that flag. Here's the list I have right here. So this included Democrat Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, John Carney of Delaware. These are all Democrats again. Laura Kelly of Kansas, Tony Evers of Wisconsin, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois even ordered the flags to half-staff in memory of Charlie Kirk, which might be a little surprising to you, right? He's a big anti-Trump guy, hugely aggressive, really have a lot of problems with him politically speaking, but he even went along with that, which further shows if Pritzker did it and Newsom doesn't, what exactly is going on there with Newsom? That shows like Newsom's being very, very far left here. And it also includes, of course, Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind. Not only is Gavin Newsom, I should say, coming out this weekend and saying that I strongly condemn political violence, but again, not that seriously. I only halfway condemn political violence. Not only is he, of course, running for president in 2028 and the likely frontrunner, currently trying to rebrand himself as a moderate and sensible guy. Clearly, that's not the case. But I'd lastly like to remind everyone that this is exceptional in the fact, compared to even Karen Bass, that Gavin Newsom is someone who knew Charlie Kirk personally. Let's remember that. The very first guest ever on the Gavin Newsom podcast earlier this year was Charlie Kirk. By the way, by Gavin Newsom's own admission, his own son is a big fan of Charlie Kirk. Anyone remember this?
Last night, trying to put my son to bed, he's like, no, Dad, what time? What time's Charlie going to be here? What time? And I'm like, dude, you're in school tomorrow. He's 13. He's like, no, this morning, wakes up at 6 something. He's like, I'm coming. I'm like, he literally would not leave the house.
Did you let him to take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is
you canceled school for like 2 years. One day.
The point is the point, which is you are making a damn dent.
Thank you.
So let's get this straight, Gavin. After all that, after he, to the criticism even of some conservatives at the time, did you a little favor by launching a lot of publicity for your podcast. And obviously Charlie did push back. He did argue with you, but it was content, right? After all this brow-nosing, by the way, you did of him, like, my son's a big fan, you're making a really big dent. You can't even follow equally Trump-deranged Governor J.B. Pritzker and others in the order to simply lower your flag as a sign of respect. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. It'd be one thing if this didn't happen, but that's especially dirty. That's especially low. Like, it's well established, of course. Gavin Newsom is a backstabbing, cunning sociopath. He doesn't care about anything or anyone but himself and his own power. That's well known. But talk about the greatest example of this right here. You know, the guy helped you out in a sense. He did you kind of a favor publicity-wise in a sense. Your son likes this guy. Nope, apparently not. Even now today, you see here, Gavin Newsom making comments, he just put this out a couple hours ago actually. Quote, rather than trying to unite our country, Donald Trump is trying harder than ever to divide us. I'd say it's unbecoming, but we all know we're beyond that. We cannot let him use political violence as an excuse to dismantle our democracy. So you're mad at Donald Trump because he's not trying to unite our country. And yet, I don't know how many people are realizing this, but I certainly am, Gavin. I told you, 2028, we know all about you, buddy, that you didn't want to unite the country. Uniting the country would have meant lowering the flag for a guy that you knew personally. I mean, geez. The good news here, folks, is that the rather reprehensible behavior out of both Bass and Newsom, of course, did not stop many patriots, especially in the Southern California area, from rallying and holding some pretty massive vigils, perhaps some of the biggest we've seen across this entire country, just yesterday and today, out of a place like Huntington Beach and Beverly Hills. Take a look at some of those sights and sounds. Yeah, well, big surprise, and needless to say, neither Karen Bass nor Gavin Newsom were spotted at any of the vigils for Charlie Kirk. But that's the thing, is they don't want you to notice. It's not like this was this big public stand, oh, we're not doing it. It was just quietly, this is the case, and they expect you to not really know that it happened. That's why I say especially. That's why we're putting this out here, by the way, to Gavin Newsom. That is super screwed up. When your other Democrat governor colleagues are fine going along with it, and you, the one of them who knew Charlie Kirk and interviewed Charlie Kirk, and your son likes Charlie Kirk, no, just not going to say anything about it. We're noticing, buddy. And that's a repeated trend here in many of these California Democrats. They never want you to know about their terrible decisions or their policy failures. However, last California Democrat I'd like to address in this video is actually Congressman Khanna, who I believe is out of somewhere in Northern California. Because Khanna, I will say, does deserve some credit. When it came to the Tesla vandalism cases back in like the spring of this year, he was actually the first prominent Democrat to come out and say, this is wrong, stop supporting this, I fully condemn this as a Democrat. Same situation with Charlie Kirk. That's not the argument I'm making. But even on the front of him, you do see cases and instances trying to deflect or shift the blame away from what truly happened here. And the argument he's been making is, yes, I condemn political violence, it's bad, but, the right does it as well, and the right supports it as well, right? Trying to play the both sides issue and saying, I condemn both sides, right? Holier than thou, essentially. Here's what he put out today, saying, quote, at JD Vance, as you climb your mountain of truth, and this is, by the way, responding to a comment Vance made earlier today, pointing out that the vast majority of this mental lunacy is indeed happening on the left, stop spreading falsehoods about the left being more willing to condone political violence. A fearful and hurting nation begs you to see beyond the partisan tribe. Let's stop blaming each other and lift America up. And this is what he provided. This is his evidence out of Axios. That is basically trying to show a poll saying, hey, look, Republicans are also in support of political violence. But here's what I want you to specifically look at. As a matter of fact, let's first start off by comparing this to what Charlie Kirk actually warned us about ahead of time back in April of this year, which is assassination culture on the left. And then we'll show you what Khanna is trying to say is the whataboutism or the both sides argument to this case. So, as Charlie Kirk pointed out, about 50% of all liberal voters in this country, according to polling, believe it would be justified to commit political assassinations of people they disagreed with. You can see this right here. This poll states that justification for murder of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. 48.6% of liberal voters in this country, earlier this year, this is not something old or decades old, right? 48% said it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 55%, as you can see right here, said the same thing about Donald Trump. So this poll directly asks, would it at all be justified to assassinate people in politics you disagree with? Around half, to some cases more than half, of liberal voters said yes. Now, that of course displays what? There is a rampant glorification of violence and direct violence and murder and all these things on the left, as I've been saying, right? It's not a small or fringe thing. It is literally 1 in 2 of them in this country. It is widespread. Khanna claims he condemns it, but he also wants to make the whataboutism here. So, what is the whataboutism he's pointing out? Well, these are old polls from 2021 and 2023, and this asks the question of the share who say they agree with the statement that, quote, American patriots may have to resort to violence in order to save the country. You can see in 2021, 28% of Republicans said yes. In 2023, 33% of Republicans said yes. And this adds up to nearly a quarter of Americans who agree that patriots may have to resort to violence in order to save the country. Except there's just a couple of problems with this argument. Which is first and foremost, even if you want to make that case, you see the difference in the numbers. Only around 30% of Republicans said it was okay, whereas 50% of liberal voters, aka Democrats, are saying it. So even if you want to both sides this, there's a huge discrepancy still, but I further look at the very question here being asked. Again, American patriots may have to resort to violence in order to save the country. That is a hypothetical and hugely different from asking whether or not it's justified to directly assassinate sitting and current named political figures. What do I mean by that? Well, this question is essentially asking, hey, if at the point where things got really bad, would it be morally justified to have broad, basically violence, right? Whether that's a revolution or a civil war or something like that. Now that's, again, number one, what? A hypothetical question. At some point in time, if it came to that, would a civil war be justified, for instance? That's what's being kind of posed here, right? It's not directly saying something like, I don't know, assassinate Joe Biden or assassinate Kamala Harris or Hakeem Jeffries, Gavin Newsom, someone like that. It's just a general statement, right? Is there ever a point in history or kind of the situation of a country where you need armed revolution or something like that? Now, I'm not making a statement on it. I'm just saying, of course, that this hypothetical question is a lot different from what was asked of the leftists, again, directly, of sitting politicians right now at this point in time, of the people who currently are in political power, not hypothetical. How about assassinating Donald Trump? How about assassinating Elon Musk? And again, even in that case, we're asking two fundamentally different questions. The right-wing one that was asked to right-wingers is broad and vague and hypothetical. The left-wing one was very concrete. Even still, only 30% of Republicans said yes to their question. 50% of liberals said yes to their question. This is not a both sides issue, Khanna. There is no equivalence. Obviously, we condemn isolated cases of violence that do happen on both sides. That's not the argument I'm making. But again, the discrepancy here in Americans who support violence is widely different on the left and the right. Stop pretending they're the same. They're not, right? And probably in a future video, we'll respond further to this claim I kept seeing online today that, oh, there's way more, generally speaking, right-wing violence and left-wing violence. No, there's not. There's not. All these studies you're seeing, all the compilation of these statistics, totally bogus, totally fake. Keep in mind, these are the very same people who claim that riots are mostly peaceful protests. You know, the left-wing shooter, they're saying to this day, who took out Charlie Kirk was not leftist, he's rightist, right? And basically any case of white on black crime is a hate crime, but no case of black on white violence or even black on Asian violence back in 2020 was a hate crime, right? So this is all the manipulation of this stuff they do, even showing you right here, two polls not asking the same questions to pretend it's a both sides issue. Again, folks, it simply is not. So when J.D. Vance, for instance, goes out and said, yes, if we want to stop political violence, like what happened to Charlie Kirk, we have to be honest about the people who are celebrating it and the people who are financing it. He is correct. It is not a both sides issue, folks. But with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.